What's up?
Hi. Now I'm like, it's all so quiet. Hello, 130 beautiful faces. I hope that you're all in good health and good spirits. And I'm so sad that like what's going on in the world is going on, but I'm also so happy to see how much community is just we're just adjusting to what life is now, and so many people have worked and scrambled to create spaces, virtual spaces, and I think that that's so. I mean, I've always been about this from day one, and everybody always looked at me weird because I was the internet girl that always wanted to do everything on the internet, and now everybody's in my world, and I'm so happy. This is how I know how to engage with folks. So thank you, Daniel, for making this possible. I originally wasn't part of the workshop lineup, and then I jumped in once I saw that my friends were doing it, and Daniel made it possible. So thank you so much. Daniel, for those of you that don't know, is one of the founders and people behind Notacult. And I hear myself in an echo.
Muted that person.
Okay. And so yes, so thank you, Daniel. Do you want to say anything before we get started?
Gosh. There we go. Thank you for doing this. Thank you everyone who's come to this workshop. We have a series of workshops available at notacult.media/events. We're going to be announcing the second slate of workshops happening next week, which will be with a bunch of people. Carla Cordero will be doing another workshop. Edwin's going to be continuing his series. Jose Olivares is going to be doing some workshops.
I'll be doing it next week again too. I just decided.
Hey, Yesika will be doing it again next week. So yeah, thank you so much everyone who's here and who's participating in this. It is a really beautiful keystone of community, and it's giving me life. So thank you so much for being here, all of you.
Thank you. Also, Lucero, I saw that your little one just waved at me. That's so cute. Okay, so that being said, all you will need for this will be something to write on. So many of you are on a computer, so if you want to use a document, that's perfectly fine. If you want to write with pen and paper, that's fine. If you want to write with your phone, there's no rules to how you write. A question I get asked every time I ask folks to ask me questions about writing is about how I write, and I usually get annoyed at the question because I'm like, it's just freaking write. It doesn't matter how. But I get it. Sometimes when you are new at writing, you just want to make sure that you're doing everything the right way, right? And so I want to tell you that there is no wrong way to write as long as you're writing. So you're not less of a writer if you write all your poems in your phone than someone who writes them in calligraphy. I don't know who still writes in calligraphy, but still, just so you know that. Most of the poems in my books have been written, especially in Corazon, were written like in my phone when I was at work or when I was on the bus or when I was hiding in my break room or whatever. So as long as you're creating, it's fantastic. And especially now with the way things are, I don't care how or how you do it as long as you do it. So take out a sheet of paper or a document, and at the top of the document, I want you to write the date, which is it would be helpful if I knew the date. It's March 25th. And I want you to write the time, whatever the time is for you. Here in Los Angeles is 7:14 p.m. I want you to write the time right under the date. And I want you to write your full name. And under your full name, I want you to write the city you're in. And under that, you are going to write one fact about today. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be poetic or anything. You're just going to write a fact. It could be that you just had dinner. It could be that you're overwhelmed. It could be that you're stressed. It could be that you're excited. Whatever it is, it could be that your dog has to get walked in 10 minutes or whatever. Whatever it is, just a fact about today that is true in this moment. And if we ever move forward and you're falling behind, you could always just type in the little chat, which I have open. You could ask me to repeat something. You could just type repeat and I'll repeat whatever I said, or I need another minute, and then I could give y'all another minute. So I'm looking at the chat as I'm talking to y'all. Okay, so the reason why I had you write all of that first is to center you, to ground you, and also many times as writers, when we go back to things we've written before, we forget to date them. And it's really cool to be able to see something and know exactly where you were and what you were doing when you wrote it. So this is for you to keep whatever we come up with today, whether it becomes something you end up using or it doesn't. You'll be able to go back and be like, oh, in March at this time, I sat with Yesika and we wrote this poem, and this is where it was at, and this is what was happening, and damn, I had forgotten that I ever did that workshop, or blah, 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 blah. It's pretty cool to be able to like step back into who you were in that moment. And I think that a lot of times we forget to talk to our future selves, that the present person can talk to our future selves to set ourselves up for whatever it is that happens in the future. And I'm a strong believer in that, like in leaving myself love notes that I know I will need later. And so just think of just carry that with you in the future, that sometimes on a good day, you could do a lot of work for yourself that's going to happen on a bad day. So, okay. So now we're going to jump into the nitty gritty of it. Let me open my document. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to envision yourself in a restaurant booth. It'll be at your favorite restaurant, your favorite place to eat, the place you go to after you've partied all night, or the place that you like to take your mother to, or the place where you take all of your dates. Whatever it is, envision that place. You've been visiting it for years. It's comforting, it's familiar. You've ordered your favorite thing that's on their menu. The best server in the whole restaurant is helping you. They're playing your favorite music, or the music that you like to hear when you're there. It is a safe environment for you. It is a welcoming environment for you. And now, as you're sitting in that booth or on a table, I want you to envision someone across from you. It could be someone you know intimately, or it could be someone you've never met, but it's someone that's important to you, that has an impact on your life, that is someone that holds a lot of value for you. So envision that person. I want you don't need to write it down, but envision them. Like envision their face, if you know what their face looks like. Envision like how they would be sitting, where their hands would be. Just place them in that booth with you. It could be someone you're in love with. It could be someone you're angry with. It could be someone you miss, or someone you wish was not in your life. It could be someone alive or someone gone. It could be a personal hero, or it could be someone that you're trying to overcome. Now that we've envisioned that person, I want you to write down one thing that you would want to tell them right now. Anything that you could tell them that will have no repercussions. It's complete freedom for you to express whatever it is that you want. I want you to write that down. It doesn't have to be something, it could be anything. It could be good news, it could be bad news, you could be getting something off your chest, you could be confessing something, or you could be sharing something. I want you to write down what it is. If I were to be sitting in a booth with someone today, the person across from me would be my father, who's passed away. And I would really want to explain to him what's happening in the world right now, because I think that I would really want his opinion on it. So I would explain to him how I would tell him like about my mom and how I'm stressed that she's not staying in the house, and that my sister still has to go to work and all that. And so that's what I would want to communicate in this moment. It doesn't have to be about what we're living. It could be anything. You could have gotten good news today, and that's what you want to share. Okay. Now, since you shared that, I'll give you another minute to write that down. I'll give you a second. Some of you are still writing. I still see many of you writing. And if you've come into the session as we already started, I'm really not going to be repeating myself, but you could just sit and listen. And there will be spaces where you'll be able to jump back in. And then also we're going to be sharing these prompts and all of this online. And the workshop is also being recorded and will be shared on YouTube, right, Daniel?
That is correct.
Perfecto.
Perfecto.
Okay. Does anyone want to share what they wrote? So, how would this work? I think it would work if you say me in the chat, and then Daniel could unmute you if he sees you.
Yeah, either that or like the raise hand feature.
Or the raise hand. Whatever works for you, best for you, Daniel.
Works. All right, Alexa, you're gonna be up. I'm gonna figure out. Alexa, you're unmuted. You're up. Share.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi.
I just say what I wrote.
Yeah, you could read it.
Or okay, so I'm envisioning my
share.
mother. Yeah. Okay. So I'm envisioning my mother sitting across from me, and what I would ask her is, does the fact that I like girls still bother you? Like, does she think it's still just a phase? Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Do I mute myself again?
Thank you, Alexa. I think Daniel will mute you again. Thank you for sharing that, Alexa.
Gitano, Freddie. Gitano, you're unmuted.
Okay, so I'm envisioning a high school sweetheart who was really pivotal in my life. But obviously it was like a period of growth for us, so things didn't really work out, but it was a very pivotal point and a really important person at the time. So I would say, I wish we could know each other now instead of 10 years ago. I want to say that I am myself, more myself than the walking pitchfork that sat next to you in history class. So that's me.
That's lovely.
All
right. We are now going. Do you want more? How many people do you want to share, Yesika?
Thank you. We could take one more.
One more. Okay. I'm going to randomly pick a person. Amy Lopez, you are unmuted.
Oh, okay. This is for my son. We used to go to a local restaurant. He's 19 and he's stuck in his dorm in Merced, so I haven't seen him. So, really hard for me. Your essence brings life to my soul, and every day I miss you more. I miss our time together, cooking, roasting each other, comforting each other's pain. I miss you, my little man. My corazón is missing an essential part.
Thank you for that, Amy. Thank you so much. Oh, y'all, this is gonna be so beautiful. I'm so excited, and y'all are getting ahead of me. Don't write beautiful yet. No, I'm kidding. So what we're gonna work now is on identifying the sentiment, the feeling in what you just shared. So think about it. Is it hopeful? Are you upset? Are you angry? Are you anxious? Are you excited? Are you full of love or joy? Are you experiencing fear? Whatever it is, take a second to think of that statement and write whatever that feeling is right under the statement. So Julie, you're going to be writing about when you wrote the statement, what were you feeling? Like as you're sitting at this diner with this person and you're telling them this thing, what are you feeling within you? Like when I would be if I were talking to my dad right now, I would be feeling frustrated. So give your whatever your thing was a feeling? Yes. Okay, so we have a feeling. I want you to think of this thing that you wrote down that you're going to tell this person as your thesis statement. This is going to be what is going to ground the poem we're going to be writing together, because we're writing a poem together. This is what we're doing. I call the workshop To the Bloom because I feel that throughout the process of this hour, we are planting a seed, watering it, and watching it bloom, and which will be a poem. And so if you've never written a poem before, today is the day that you're going to write a poem. So congratulations. So the next step is going to be, we're going to leave that alone for a second. And we're going to talk about what a metaphor is. Does anyone know what a metaphor is? Does anyone want to tell me what they think a metaphor is? Do I see a face? Do we see a hand? GMI said they can.
Yeah. A metaphor is when you use another object to replace, to represent something that you're feeling. A simile would use the word like, so, you know, fast as lightning would be a simile, but if you say he is lightning, that means that is a metaphor, and you're comparing, in this example, a person to lightning. So yeah.
Perfect definition. Thank you so much, GMI. So yeah, so metaphor is a comparison between two things that states that one thing is another. So some metaphors that I would use that I like is like, her smile is the horizon, or his eyes are two shooting stars, or I am a fish confusing the sea for sky. Or I have a poem that is actually a metaphor. And it is, I am not a religious woman, but I remember the first time I made you laugh. All the air around me became a gown, the white of your teeth something to walk down an aisle for. I needed to find your God and ask him to forgive me for trying to love anyone else before you. So that is a metaphor in a poem. And so now I want you, now that we know what a metaphor is, you're going to be writing a metaphor inspired by the line that you wrote and the feeling and the sentiment that you wrote. The reason why I had you write out a feeling was that most of my poems start as a feeling and then become an idea and then end up being conceptualized. And for me, it helps me to identify the feeling before I even write anything. Because if I don't know where the poem's going, many times, right? We're discovering the poem as we're writing, but I do know what I want you to feel. And so that is always my compass. I want, in faith, I was so in love with someone that, like, someone laughed and I was so moved that I couldn't get enough of his laughter. I wanted to write a poem that encompassed all of the fact that this man's laughter makes me feel like he's the one, right? And so I didn't know when I first, I remember thinking of the metaphor that I used, but I'm like, how does this make sense? But at least I know that the one thing that does make sense is how much love I feel for this person. So I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to write a metaphor that is as long as a stanza. And remember, think of the statement that you wrote and the feeling you identified. And remember these things when you're writing. The more specific you are, the more relatable your book, the more, that was yesterday's workshop. Yesterday we're talking about books, today we're talking about a poem. The more specific you are, the more relatable your poem becomes. The more details you give, the easier it is to experience whatever it is that you're hoping your reader experiences. For example, so the more a reader can connect with you, the writer, it helps your poem become a clearer mirror, because I am a strong believer that people come to poetry searching for themselves. And sometimes we don't know who's reading our work, right? We don't know who's reading our work. All we could do is work on being the mirror, which means being the clearest picture of ourselves as possible. So a stanza can be anything from 4 lines to, let's say, from 4 to 8 lines. I'm not gonna try to get you to write too long. If you're thinking of your feelings, so it's about the feeling that you're reading. We're not worried about what the person that you're talking to, how they're reacting. Sorry, I just had a question asked for me of whose feeling are you considering. You're not worried about what the other person is going to do to react with how the other person is reacting to whatever we're telling them. We're talking about our side of the table. So whatever it is that you're experiencing, if you're feeling hope, is you want to convey that as much as possible. So you're writing a standalone metaphor, and you could reference back to the feeling that you identified in the statement that we wrote of what you're saying to this person. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes for that. Someone asked, is it bad to have more than one feeling? No, I want you to know that there's no wrong way that you could do this. All I'm doing is I'm guiding you through this writing process. So if there's multiple feelings that you're feeling within your writing, experience them, explore them. If you decide that all of a sudden you don't like the statement that you wrote after we've been talking for a while, then you can go ahead and take your stanza in a different direction. It's fine. There's no wrong way to write a poem. And all we're doing now is writing the first draft of a poem. Because later you could go and edit it into something completely different. Or you could decide that it's not what you want and just walk away with one line from the poem. So there's no obligation for you to create anything permanent. So play with what you have and let yourself be free within the writing. I went and got a pastry for myself. So you have about 2 minutes left.
People want to know if they can pay you beyond Venmo.
That's beautiful. If I do have a PayPal, but also yeah, I mean, like, y'all have been so generous. Like, y'all are wild. Whatever you would have paid me, please just go on Notacult and buy yourself a new book.
Hey.
You could pay me that way. You don't have to even buy my book. Buy anybody's books. Seriously, somebody Venmo me $100. So whoever you are.
That's awesome. Holy shit.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm gonna go reach out to you, like, your Venmo payment, so that I could, like, send you something extra, because that's wild. I mean, I appreciate it. I think I'm worth $100, but you're worth $100 too. Okay, my sweet angel babies, time's up, pens down, hands off your keyboards. I don't know. I mean, like, whatever, you could do whatever you want. I can't see you. Yeah, okay. So does anybody want to share what they wrote?
Okay, we're gonna start here with oh my gosh, Adam Mesa. Adam, where are you in the chat? There you are. Unmute. Adam, you're unmuted. Adam? No.
Adam.
Adam.
Hey. Hi.
Hey.
Hey. Hear me?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, cool. This poem is written about a woman I was very close to. That's all the context you need. Meadowlark burgers. Greasy, fat, delicious, so goddamn good. But they didn't fill me. As bloated and as full as I felt, I wasn't filled. That was you. You occupied space but never fulfilled. I loved you so goddamn much, I'd eat you every day. But you, with your bacon and cheese, never really loved me back.
Aw.
I love that. I've never had someone use burgers as metaphors. I appreciate it as a fellow burger lover. And it's almost like a heartbreak burger. That's so on brand. I appreciate you. Thank you for that, Adam. Anybody else want to share?
Erica Guzman, you are unmuted. Erica. Hello, Erica.
My hands are sweating.
Erika Guzman.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this is about my current partner. The ink on his skin takes me back to the time when I was doodling my future. All the cuts and the bruises life has thrown at me. We're waiting for him. We're waiting to be cured and healed by him.
Oh,
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Erica.
how many people do you want to do, Yesika?
2 more.
All right. All right. All right. Alexa, you are up. Elizondo. Alexa Elizondo.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. I ended up changing it instead of what it was for my statement. Anyway, it's about my brother. So do I just go?
Okay. Yeah, just go, my love.
Okay. Everything depends on the little girl. Wash the dishes, keep those grades up. Don't set her brother off. The tiniest breath knocks over his pyramid of masculinity. The louder he yells, the more she can't hear. Because she was taught to sit and listen like a good girl, but can't when tears begin to choke her. She tiptoes through the field She tiptoes through a field of tulips, not wanting to ruin the perfect picture her mother calls family. But when night falls, she sees her mother watching the tulips, beginning to cry. The little girl remembers why she can't speak. The garden isn't ready for her voice.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. Man, y'all. One more person.
All right, Julie Corrales, you are up. Julie, hi. Yeah.
We can hear you, Julie.
I don't have a webcam. So the feeling I was trying to get was bittersweet, and so I wrote, my heart swells with moments of you. I close my eyes and grin in pleasure. I feel your calloused hands against my hip bones. My heart pushes against my rib cage and I wince. I see your hazy face against my pillow and my sternum cracks. I remember a joke and then my heart bursts a broken dam. I sob through my laughter.
Beautiful.
That's sort of
these are all so good. Okay, so does anybody have any questions so far? Like about a metaphor, about the stanza that you wrote, about just any kind of confusion or just any clarification that you would want. That's the time. If you don't want to go on mic, you could also type it in the chat and I could answer it out loud. I just love how supporting also y'all are being of each other in the chat. This is so beautiful. April said, advice for making metaphors more unique and less generic. So I always like to tell people to reach for the top shelf. Many times when we're writing, we like to get what's right in front of us, right? Which is like the kind of language that's really common. Also, this is a good plug-in to Edwin Bodney's workshop, who he is always talking about reaching for stronger language. And I know Edwin's workshops are on Mondays, but okay, commercial mode over. But it's always good for the top shelf. So if you, let's say, if you wanted to write a metaphor about your eyes are two shooting stars, we've all heard that before, right? We've all heard eyes being compared to stars or whatever. Okay, so if you will write that metaphor for someone's eyes being two stars, what can you write? What can you add into that to make that specifically yours, right? So if I were to say your eyes are two stars in a Salvadoran sky, that already makes that metaphor very different than just saying your eyes are two stars. Because now you're like, oh, a Salvadoran sky? Like, what's so different about a Salvadoran sky than a Cali sky, right? Like, there's already setting up something for whatever the next line will happen that's already gonna connect with it, and that gives you more room to move. So the more specific you are in your writing, the more detailed you are, there's so much more to go into. If we write in very general terms and very broad terms, you're kind of you're on the, like, you don't get to the meat and potatoes of things, right? Like you're just right on the surface. Sorry, everything's moving. Advice for not using the word you a lot. You don't really have to. A lot of times if you're writing specifically at least to one person and you make it clear like there's a you, the second person you're writing to, you don't have to keep addressing to them. Like if you were talking to me, you wouldn't be saying Yesika in every single line, because you and I are having a conversation. So you wouldn't be saying, Yesika, I miss you, and oh, Yesika, blah, 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 whatever. So you don't always have to refer to the you because it's already implied. Now, if you're adding a different person, if you're saying, you make me feel X, Y, Z, and I sat with your mother at the table, then you would have to say you again because you already introduced another person and you have to redirect to who you're talking to all the time, like to who you're actually talking about. Does that make sense? Because I think I confused myself.
It made sense.
Perfect. When you use Spanglish, primarily English, do you translate every Spanish word? I don't translate. Whatever language you get moved to write in is the language that you were supposed to be writing that in. I don't think that the writer ever has an obligation to translate something for someone if the writer is speaking in their languages. Okay, that being said, any other questions before we move forward with the exercise? No? Okay. So, Okay, so every poem, there's movement within every poem. There's always a point A and a point B that you're getting into. I know that a poem is different than a short story, so it's not gonna have like a plot like other pieces of writing. You don't really have to have characters, but there's always has to be movement, even if you're just expressing a feeling within the poem, because one, if there's no movement, then you're just saying the same thing over and over. And two, you're trying to convey something. So there has to be a time where you didn't convey what you were going to say and a time that you did convey what you were going to say. And that is the movement that will happen throughout your piece. But in whatever you're writing, like Adam wrote about hamburgers, right? About someone being about what's missing in there. So if Adam were to write another stanza that would go with the hamburgers, I would advise that he would move away from the hamburger metaphor and place that into something else. You could play with the place where you bought the hamburger. You could play with the sides of that you would have the hamburger with. You could extend the metaphor and go further into like the ingredients of it. So there's many ways that you can help a metaphor move past its first stanza. So what we'll be doing now is we will be writing our second stanza of the poem. And I want you to either continue writing with the first metaphor that you wrote for, or think of a metaphor that complements the first. So if in the first one, we had, let me come back over here. We had a Gitano that said pitchfork. He said the word, he compared himself to a pitchfork, and it was like so brief, but it was so, right? So now you have the opportunity to touch on that metaphor. So like, how are you a pitchfork? Like, or how were you a pitchfork, right? And like what can you write that will complement that brief metaphor you gave us if you want to stretch it out? Or if not, you could work around things that complement a pitchfork, right? Like, what do you think of when you think of pitchforks? You either think of someone, a farmer, or you think of an angry mob with pitchforks, right? And so which is the metaphor that you're going to go in what direction? Are you going to be scooping up hay, or are you going to be like, or are you rioting? And that's so interesting to take that further. So I invite you in the next stanza that you're writing, whether you continue the same metaphor that you had, or you're writing a complementary metaphor, think of this. How do you move this forward? What movement can you create within the piece that you're writing? Also, details. Give me all of the specifics. I want to know what the handle of the pitchfork was like. I want to know what time of day it was. I want to know, like, did the hamburger have pickles or not? I want to, you know what I mean? Like, I want to know, give me the sauce. This is the opportunity where you get to put yourself within the poem completely. And so I want you to add that into your writing. And so just think of this stanza also as kind of ending the conversation that you're having with this person. So just think of that. Thinking of this is going to be like you're already wrapping up the conversation that you're having. So include that into it. Somebody's asking how they would incorporate Spanish or any other language into a metaphor, or should it just flow naturally? I would suggest that if you want to write bilingual, like, or if you want to write in Spanglish or whatever the other glitches are of other languages, just do what feels natural to you. If that's what your calling is. If you're sitting here and you think, should I write in Spanish? Should I write in English? If your language isn't either way, if the poem isn't asking you for it, then I wouldn't do it. You have to also listen to what the piece that you're writing about, would it convolute the poem? Would it be too much happening? Or does it help? And if you can't answer either question, then maybe just write it all in one language. And later when you're editing, you could switch out things to make it be what you want, like Spanglish or whatever it is that you want it to be. But don't feel obligated to write in a language that doesn't come to you at first when you're coming to the subject. There's different subjects that ask to be written in different ways. And maybe this one just wants you to use the plainest language that you know, and whichever one it is that you're choosing to write in. I know that when I'm writing about really tender things, when I'm writing to like my little girl me, I get moved to write in Spanish because that's how I spoke when I was a little girl. And then all of the times that I experienced love for the first time from my mother and from my father were in Spanish. And so then that makes sense. And I also have in a poem talking about how I don't often write in Spanish when I'm talking about a lot of the trauma, because I'm like, things are too real in that language and English lets me be removed. So everybody has different relationships with different languages, and just let that show up with what you're writing. So I'm going to give you another 10 minutes for this. Okay, so it's 53 right now, and I'm going to check back in at you at 02. I love seeing all your little working faces. Just unmuted to say 2 more minutes. There's a lot of yelling in my house happening. Okay, we're gonna start sharing, but if you're writing, you can still keep writing. Cool? Does anybody want to share their second stanza that didn't share the first time? I just want to give a lot of people the option.
Estella jumped on it. I'm gonna give it to her. Estella,
Hello?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So the second stanza I wrote said, "You hover belongingly in this night sky. You are finely ground stardust in my midnight canvas, where I finally see your beauty after your hiding during most of my life, as a flower curls up in winter. I see your reality. You tell me so much as you are. I take the time to stare at you with no fear, you exposed with no smoke screens between us."
Thank you.
How
Otra
many people do you
persona.
want to do, Yesika?
We'll do 2 more.
Okay. Indira, you're up. Unmute. Indira.
Hello.
Hello.
So mine's in Spanish. I hope that's okay.
Perfectly
That's fine.
All right. Tú eres el agua que mi cuerpo necesita. No aguanto el pensamiento de la sed de tu ausencia. Te necesito, océano mío, y necesito que venzas esta sequía. Bailaré contigo gritándole a las nubes de este cielo de Santander, pidiendo un diluvio. Tú sigue creando olas, aunque sean grandes o pequeñas. Yo moveré con el ritmo a tu lado. Lo que necesito es saber que un día la lluvia llegará.
Thank you, Indira.
Indira, that is beautiful. Thank you. And that is a perfect, I just want to say that's a perfect example of details helping give such a beautiful image. For those of you that didn't understand, that did understand because it was in Spanish, you see how she spoke of drought and she basically telling this person to break her drought, but she's like, it was just so many details that you could envision what that would look like and what a desert, a sequía would look like. And she's like, I'm cool with staying here as long as I know that there's going to be some kind of storm, some kind of rain. So it was really, really beautiful. Thank you. Next person.
Wendy Alvarez, you are up.
Wait, give me a second. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my poem is about my little sister, and my second stanza goes like this: Your face turns into a pupusa, redondita y brillosa, spotted and freckled by the heat. And then that's it.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
A little beautiful pupusa face. I've never been called a pupusa face as a compliment, so that's so sweet. So thank you so much for sharing. I think we have time for one more person.
Awesome. Okay. Sage, you are up.
Okay. Here is my second stanza. You are the bitten fingernails that hide inside of my closed fist. My knuckles turn white trying to conceal you. The jagged edges scrape against my once soft palms until they're nothing but shredded meat.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sage, for sharing. Okay, so we wrote the first stanza and we wrote the second stanza. Did anybody have any difficulties with the connection within the two stanzas? Or does anybody feel like they wrote two completely different pieces? Gitana, you felt that way? It doesn't matter if your second stanza was super short or any, like there's no required length for anything. Some people's poems are way much longer than what we're writing today. Some people's poems are usually 5 to 6 lines. I tend to write shorter pieces, which is what I enjoy. In the chat, Melanie said she definitely wrote two completely different pieces, and that's fine. That's totally fine. I would Melanie, where are you? Can we unmute Melanie? And I would want to hear both of her stanzas if Melanie is fine with that.
Melanie Posas?
Yes, please.
Melanie, you are unmuted now. There you go.
Melanie, do you want to share what you wrote, like your whole thing?
Perhaps.
Maybe.
She's unmuted, but her mic isn't bumping.
Darn it. Does anybody feel that they had two different pieces and they would want to share so that we could hear what two things that maybe don't connect sound like? If you're not comfortable, that's totally fine. I usually don't like calling on specific people. I like volunteers.
What about Yasmina? She says that.
Okay, we'll go with Jasmina.
All right.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
It's me. It's Yasmin. Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So you want me to do both stanzas? Both stanzas?
Yeah. Read what you have.
Okay. So I said, loving you is a blessing. I ask the gods every night under the alabaster moon how they conspire to let me find you. But whenever you lose sight of your divinity, I build my quiet rage into a church. Let the stained glass showers illuminate the gold of your being. Even the pews will sing your name. I just kind of felt like it was like too, I mean, I know this like same thing, but I feel like the transition is kind of stark. So it's like, but whenever you lose sight, it just kind of feels like it's kind of, I don't know, fragmented, but maybe that's just me.
I mean, it didn't feel fragmented to me, but I think that could be an easy fix. It would be sometimes, so a lot of times when we're writing these pieces, and especially because it's a first draft, right? This is where you figure out and you go back, is the beginning line the beginning line? Is there something that had to happen before the stanzas that I have? Is there something that, do I need a transition between the stanzas? Do I need a different ending or whatever? So it might be what makes it feel fragmented for you was the fact that you had already written your thesis statement beforehand and your poem starts from that. So you could revisit that first statement that you wrote to talk to the person across from you and find a way to make that as a part of the poem that you're already writing.
Okay, thank you.
You know what I mean? So that you're not starting at half, because you're not starting at half thought for all of us because we're doing all of this together. But I get what you mean. You know what I mean? So it's like if you want to be able to give that without having to have a disclaimer, because this is the thing, poems shouldn't have disclaimers in the beginning. So I think it would work to like add that in, or maybe add or find a way to write into who you're talking to, and it'll feel less fragmented. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for helping me be the examples.
Yeah.
Yes. It was a bit of a struggle to make yours connect, but I think you found it. You can share. Okay. So because I want to make this an hour long, we're going to move forward. And now we're just going to write the ending to your poem. So after everything that you've written, after everything, you're going to write the last line. It's going to be the last thing you tell this person before you take yourself home. So read through your whole poem. And if you already have your ending line, and if you're happy where the ending is, then that's your ending. But remember, this is the last thing. When you write a poem should exist on the page by itself. There should never need a disclaimer to introduce the poem, and you should never have to explain the ending at the end when you explain the poem. It's supposed to be a whole complete entity on its own. Unless you're writing like a series through poem, and that's something different. But in this moment, like this poem has to be its own complete thing. You wrote two beautiful stanzas. The ending could be a line if you feel that the ending needs to be a whole 2, 3, 4 more lines, that's fine. But for the sake of time, I'm not having you write another stanza. I'm having you focus on a line to end the poem with. It could be like, and never call me again. And then that's it, you know? And then the poem ends. Sometimes when you can't find the right punctuation, the word bitch is really good at the end. I'm always saying that in my head at the end of my poems sometimes. So I will give you 2 minutes for that. And then we're gonna have 2 people share their whole pieces before we wrap up. And then I'll also give some space for questions. And just so you know, while you're writing for the next workshop, we're going to be writing one of my favorite kind of forms, and that had gotten played out for a while, but now it's making a comeback, which is the list poem. I think list poems are fun. If you don't know what a list poem is, you could just tune in next week, and we're going to write a list poem. Somebody asked me privately if they're not sure if their metaphors are metaphors enough. And I want to tell you that there is no wrong way. Nothing has to be metaphor enough. If you wrote a metaphor, it's a metaphor. And if you didn't get a metaphor right, that's fine. That's fine. It's still your poem. You still conveyed whatever it is that you needed to convey. Anyone else have any other questions? You could type it out in a little chat thing. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, pens down, time's up. If you didn't finish, that's fine. You get to edit these buddies later. This is just your first draft. So congratulations, you all wrote your first draft of a poem. Give yourselves a round of applause on mute, but give yourselves a round of applause. Congratulations. Everybody wrote a poem. So if you had never written a poem before, that no longer is true. If you always dreamt of being a poet, well, congratulations, your dream came true, and now you are a poet because you wrote a poem. So here's a diploma for everybody. My face. No, I'm kidding. So does anybody have any questions before? And then somebody said, mine's not great, but a first draft is a perfect draft. You'd be surprised of how many of my poems started off with some weird shit and then ended up becoming something that I love and I poured over. I have one of my favorite poems that I have is called Knives, and it's about surviving, like how multiple generations of my family have survived assault and how every woman survives that on a regular basis. And the poem, I kept trying to write it and everything was awful, but I kept every single draft. And then all of a sudden one day I sat down and the poem just came into itself. And it is one of the most powerful pieces that has ever used me as a vessel. And so you can't ever write off a poem by its first draft because it'll surprise you, just like us. Like sometimes we don't make the best first impressions, but then if you hang out with us, turns out we're pretty amazing.
Regarding
and so somebody asked,
oh
yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Regarding Wendy's question about the editing process, I really feel like it's just finding someone that you are on the same wavelength with when it comes to aesthetic sensibilities, someone that you trust, someone that will not bullshit you to give critical advice on how you can better convey what it is you're trying to convey as someone who really understands your intention and what you're going for.
And then also, exactly, thank you, Danielle. And then also, if you, on your own editing with yourself, when you go back to a poem on your own, I would always suggest to take a break of 2 or 3 days with a poem after you write it. If you could go longer, it's even better. So if you write something and it's frustrating you, or you feel that it's not where you want it to be, leave it alone for a little bit. Go do other things, go read other things, go write other things, and then come back to it, and it'll reintroduce itself to you. And sometimes you'll be able to see it clearer. Also, it helps if you read the poem out loud to someone. So when you're reading the poem out loud to someone, sometimes you're like, oh shit, why did I do that? Or this works really good. I didn't even know this worked this well. I want to stretch this out, or I want to do something on that. And if you don't have anybody to read your poem to, because sometimes that happens, then do a voice note and read it to yourself, and then you hear it back and you get to experience your own poem back to yourself. Let me see. Okay, so who wants to share their completed poem?
Whoa, so many me's.
Oh, whoa,
okay.
whoa, whoa.
Okay.
A bunch of me's. Okay. Okay.
Let's start with Julia.
Yes.
Okay, Julia Barba, you are up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sincerity is brittle, falling through the cracks, sunken in the earth, solid in the dirt. The smell is smoky grease, savory and sweet. The words stagger by, comforting and sting. The ground brings us warmth, hugs and stands our roots.
Thank you, Julia. Next, we're gonna rush through
Cool.
2 more people. So
Dior, you're up because you've been wanting to hop in, so you're unmuted.
Wait, me?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. Okay. I know this is a safe space, but I'm still super nervous. I'm like sweating out here. All right. Okay. So from the beginning, our love is everything. It can move moons, survive the darkest night. It can bring me to my knees, but also make me whole again. It can fill me. It has and will continue to fill me with light. Light in which I can pass off to you. Light in which can fill us both. You are my life, but no, that doesn't mean I can't live without you. It just means life without you isn't what I want. It's cold, drab, boring, routine. You have filled the deepest parts of my soul with every part of you, your words, your heart, your hands, your soul. You're beautiful and pure, and while I know I don't deserve it, I still ask for another chance, a chance to be better, do better. I can, but will you let me? I'm gonna stop there because I want someone else to go.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dior, go for it.
Thanks. This poem was written to my grandmother, who she's had Alzheimer's for about 20 years. So yeah, this might be a little hard to read.
We got you, baby.
Your love was the pair of hands which sculpted my strength. It molded my heart to withstand the struggles it would face. Seeing you once again, knowing who I am, is like being seen for the first time. You illustrated a life for me, and it was one where I felt invincible and everything is possible. I missed the mother I had for a moment and then went away. A reminder that nothing lasts forever. Practice gratitude. Mejor sola que mal acompañada. I wish I had been able to share this heartbreak with you, and I know that this would be part of your words of affirmation. I never doubted this love. It was a love that was weaved from the threads of your best attributes. Your mind was taken away, but your love shall remain everlasting, like art that represents a past well remembered.
Thank you,
Dior,
Dior.
thank you so much for sharing that with us and for giving yourself the gift of being vulnerable with other hearts that are willing to hold you. Thank you for that, and thank you for rising to the occasion, and sending you a big warm hug. Does one more person want to share? So while we regain ourselves and pull ourselves together, one more quickly.
Yeah, how about Olivia Davalos? You're unmuted.
Okay, Olivia.
Man, following after Dior though, you will achieve more than you can imagine. Your feelings of despair will disappear. Your strength will be found soon enough. One day, when you walk through the door, the lights will flicker, the phone rings, the screen radiates a soft amber glow. Some would say it's your aura. You know, it's your newly centered soul, an energy that simply glows. I know it's hard for you to believe right now. You're dimmer than that one flashlight that you always have to lick the batteries to get a few more seconds of light. Querida, soon you will light your own soul.
Thank you so much for that, Olivia. And thank you so much to everybody that allowed me to come into your homes for an hour and to guide you through this. Thank you for trusting me. And thank you for showing up within community. I know that times are really strange and really scary. And I want you to know that sometimes we seek to have some control during so much uncertainty. And the one thing that you could wholeheartedly control and make yours, and no one can ever take from you, it is your writing. You don't have to write. You don't have to write to produce for the world right now, because times are really overwhelming. But I do invite you to write for yourself, to process your own thoughts and your own feelings and your own emotions. So if you feel overwhelmed with anything, let your writing be the place where you find refuge, and show up to whoever is willing to hold community for you is a place for you. I know imposter syndrome is a real thing, right? And we all feel like, should I be here? Am I a writer? Is this for me? I don't know. If it is open to the community, it is open to you. And I invite you to always show up and take up space in places that ask you to come and take up space. Because many of us, as I'm looking through the people that showed up, were people of color. Many of us are women and femmes. Many of you are queer folks. We're all marginalized identities that are not used to having the platform. So we're used to not talking and taking up space. So thank you for participating, for sharing, for not making me beg you to share things, because sometimes that happens in a space that's very women and femme heavy, because people were used to being the supporting team, not the team that's forward. So please, continue to show up. It doesn't even have to be anything that I put on anything. There's live streams happening all over the internet. And I know that Notacult is working really, really hard to keep creating content. And a lot of this, it doesn't even make profit for Notacult. And so please, let's support them through purchasing books or sharing with other folks that they have a 50% off sale, so that they could keep making this kind of programming available for all of us. Word. I love you so much, and thank you so much for showing up. And so after this, get up, go stretch, and go watch like 90 Day Fiance or something, because you worked your little brains off for the last hour and 22 minutes. So thank you so much. And I just see the chat going and going, and I love all of you. So I love all of you. So thank you, Daniel. I love you too. Thank you.
I love
and
you,
know that
Yesika.
You and I scheme together forever. And then Carla. When is Carla's? Tomorrow?
Carla's is on Friday.
Carla Cordero, who has been in the comments and who is one of my favorite writers and has written one of my favorite books that I read in the last year, How to Pull Apart the Earth, will be giving her own writing workshop. Please take it. Please take it. Carla is an instructor, she teaches for a living, right? I just be talking and doing shit, but she teaches for a living and will be able to give you so much more knowledge. She's someone that I continuously learn from. So go learn from someone that teaches me. So Carla is an amazing gift, and I'll be at the workshop. So thank you again, everybody. Bye. I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Be well, everyone. Take care.